Welcome, everybody, to Broadcast Team Alpha. Are you ready to expand your mind, your consciousness, and elevate your understanding of this ever-changing, awakening world around you? Then welcome to Broadcast Team Alpha on our new time. We are streaming and broadcasting on Thursday night now at 7 p.m., but we're still over at the Conscious Awakening Network with our friends over there. Please go over and check them out. They've got all kinds of amazing hosts and information and classes and anything that you might be looking for during this massive time of change. Aage and I are so happy to have you with us. And we have a really special guest tonight. I just want to say thank you before we get started. Thank you for liking. Thank you for subscribing. When you hit the bell and when you hit subscribe, you help us with the algorithms so we can get amazing high profile guests like our guest tonight, Grant Cameron. So with any further ado, Aage, please tell us about Grant Cameron.
Yes. I'm so glad that you are here with us because this is going to be good. We have, as Nori said, Grant Cameron, and he really doesn't need much of an introduction because I think most people know him. But I'm going to say a couple of things anyway. And he's an author and a lot of books. And I think he's got a new one out now, so my numbers might be off, but it's quite a bit. It's 20 some books. He's a sought after speaker everywhere on radio, TV, podcasts, conferences, and he's going on a cruise this fall, a couple of months from now. And think about that, folks. Think about going on that cruise with those guys. There's going to be a whole bunch of thought leaders on that cruise. That would be fun. And we also speak on the real world we are in today. How in the world did we end up in this situation we are? And he's uncovering many of the secrets that we have been wondering about for decades, especially on the UFO, the government covers up, and consciousness, because we are figuring it out that we are living in a conscious, self-aware universe. And without any more to say from me, I want to introduce his last book is Beyond Managing Magic. And if you go to Amazon, put his name in there or the title of the book in there, you're going to see what's in it. That looks really interesting. So welcome to the show, Grant.
Welcome, Grant.
Well, thank you, folks, for having me on. I really appreciate your interest in what I'm doing, and hopefully I have some new stuff that you haven't heard today.
I have a feeling you do, but for the people, Grant, who are new, because people are waking up every day, for the people who are new, can you just tell us how you got to where you are? And for the people who don't know you, explain to them what it is that you actually do.
Okay. The way I got into this rabbit hole was 1975. If you're people who are UFO savvy will know the story about the Nimitz carrier group sighting, where the object goes from 80,000 feet down to sea level in 7/8 of a second. And everybody goes, wow, look at that. 1975, this happened in Carman, Manitoba, Canada, near where I live, just north of the Canadian border. The craft was caught on the ground. It went from the ground level to 5,000 feet in the air in 3 frames of film, 1/8 of a second. It was caught on film. So when I saw this film, there had been a bunch of reports that this small town had these sightings of object known as Charlie Red Star. I had no interest in UFOs, no interest in anything like that. But I said to my friends, instead of driving around the city, I live in a big city of about 700,000 people, said, instead of driving around here, let's go and see what they're looking at. And we didn't go until that film got taken. The film it was shot by a local TV studio here, our TV crew. They played it, they put it 1 frame at a time, they ran it through, and I was just floored. I said, wow, let's go look. And I always describe it as the fact that I bought the lottery ticket. If you buy the lottery ticket, there's a chance you can win, but I'm not going to win. We're not going to see anything. Everybody else is going to see, we're not going to see anything. We went out there, we drove around for an hour. We didn't see anything. My friend said, okay, we'll drive back into town one more time. If we don't see anything, let's go home. I said, fantastic. This has been a total waste of time. We turned the car to go back into Carmen, Manitoba. As we turn the car to go west, the thing appears from the left to the right. It's down low. It's moving about 30 or 40 miles an hour, very, very slow. It's bobbing up and down. It looked like it was alive. It was like a plasma, red, pulsing plasma object. Came right in front of the car and close enough, almost like I look back now and say it wanted to be sure that I would never go back and question UFO sightings. Nobody in the car said, is that what they're looking at? I wonder if that's what it is. Everybody's like, there it is, there it is. It was just so weird, and it flew right in front of the car. And I was absolutely infatuated. I could not believe that, like, there was miracles. It's like, man, there are miracles in the world. I can't believe this. And it dragged all my friends out 2 nights later. And my friends, after an hour, said, oh, we're going back to Winnipeg. We're hungry. And I said, no, you got to see this. This is the most amazing thing you've ever seen in your life. They went back to Winnipeg. They said, we're hungry. We're going back for pizza. They took off, left us sitting there. The second night, it was bouncing around the sky like a ping pong ball. And it was this white object bouncing around. And then it changed back into this object I'd seen the first night, except it had a green glow on the back of it. And I remember as it came at me the second night, made this little turn, and then it sort of flew back where it came, sort of in the direction where it came from. And I remember looking at it as it flew away, and I said, that may be an extraterrestrial. Man, I'm so lucky, man. I actually got to see this. And then I thought to myself, probably the most important question I've ever asked myself in my life is I going, what's it doing? It's not doing anything. It's just flying along. And it just haunted me. It's like, well, what's going on here? So I wrote a manuscript and I put the manuscript out, and nobody would publish the manuscript. The local publisher in the city where I live said, Mr. Cameron, you may believe in this kind of stuff. Count me among the unbelievers. And I went, wow, I couldn't believe it. I was like, I thought it was going to be a famous story and nobody could care less. So I said, okay, that's it. No more sightings. Nope. That's just a waste of time. Just telling people stories. Nobody cares. And I became determined at that point to figure out what was that object that I'd seen. I knew that I didn't know the answer, but I said, somebody's got to know what's going on here. Somebody's got to know what this is. And I started this pursuit, which has gone on. Next year in May, it'll be 50 years since this started for me. And I've been chasing this story. So that's how I got down the rabbit hole. And I've gone from thing to thing. And I do believe very strongly that I've been led on a path, that I've been told this, I've been told that, I've gotten messages, and it has directed me to where I am today.
Wow. Wow. 50 years, Grant. You must know a lot.
I know a lot about this. I don't know very much about anything else, but this I have a fair bit of experience in terms of stories, and I basically I always make a joke. I wasted my whole life on this. I mean, that's all I did. I basically have done this almost full time, except for 10 years when I was bringing my son up and he was playing hockey. But other than that, basically, this is what I've done, and I've been relentless at it. And I have gone around the world trying to find the most powerful people in the world who know the answer to this subject.
Wow. Wow. So let's get into some answers.
Yeah.
I know you've got a question.
I got a sneaky suspicion too that the very first time that you saw that was not an accident. That was meant for you because there was something planned for you to help wake people up, and you sure have done that.
Yeah, and that I learned years later when I got into all the other aspects of the paranormal, is that I've come to believe that life is not random, that you come into the world for a reason, you have things that you plan to do, and when you leave, they only ask you one question, and that is, how did it work out? Because you planned it. And you can't blame the president, you can't blame the mother-in-law, you can't blame the dog that ate the homework. It's basically, this is irrelevant. Don't bring up anybody else. You planned this. How did it work out? And everybody says the same thing. I could have done better. I forgot to do this, and I was going to do that, but I got scared, and that's basically what it comes down to. So yes, in fact, but a lot of these revelations that I had didn't come till years later. The original film that was taken, I went back and I interviewed the people who had taken the film, and even then I didn't catch on. The guy who was doing the film was actually not a cameraman from the studio. Because what had happened is they'd almost got it the night before. There's a bunch of TV crews out there trying to capture this thing on film, and they almost got it. And so they went back to the TV studio, and the guy, the assistant producer, said, that's it. No more UFOs. Anybody wants to go and do this stupid nonsense, you can go on your own time. We're not paying any more overtime. This is crazy. There were no more UFO stuff. So they put a volunteer crew that went out to do this. So these guys did not get paid for this thing. And NBC picked it up. It became the most famous nocturnal light film in the world at that time. And nobody got paid for it. They're all on their own time. And so they didn't even have a cameraman because the cameraman didn't want to go. So they had a film editor who was shooting the camera. And this thing was on the ground and it was sort of glowing up and it would glow back down, it would glow up and it would glow back down. This guy was left on the road and two cars went, one north, one south, to try to come around on this thing and get close to it. And the one on the north side actually came within about maybe a quarter mile of it. It was sitting in a field. It was sitting on an angle like a movie screen, like a driving movie screen, but it wasn't touching the ground. It was just hovering there, blood red thing. And it jumped up in the air. That's when this guy caught it. But when I interviewed the guy, I was talking to him about taking the film, and he said, I was looking in the viewfinder. I'm looking in this viewfinder, and it was sitting there, and it was glowing up and it was glowing down, and I knew they'd almost got something the night before. So I said, the next time it glows up, before it glows back down, I'm going to shoot so we can get something on film. So then it was almost like the UFO said, ready? He pushed the trigger and the thing jumped. As he pushed the trigger, the thing jumped. And it was like 20 years later, I'm going, that didn't happen by accident. There's no way that happened by accident. And it was because originally it started in February of 1975. And I said to my friend, let's go look at what they're looking at. And we didn't go because I had no interest. We forgot about it. And then it was in May of 1975 when this film was taken. So when they played the film on TV and they slowed it frame by frame and it had all these echoes in it, it was bobbing up and down. It was going on this wave and a small wave on the big wave, and it was rotating, and it was the most amazing film. And then I said, come on, let's go. And that was the whole deal, was if that film had not been taken, I never would have gotten involved because I had no interest. And that's the whole thing. There's the only time a UFO that I know ever got caught on the ground and was captured on film. And it was almost like they needed me out there. They needed me to go. And they did this big production of getting caught on the ground and being filmed in order to get me to go out there and do this thing. Because I went out and I would take crews because I was there for 2 years. Almost every second night I was there talking to interviewing people, and I saw a number of objects up close. And basically all my friends went on with their life. Nobody, didn't affect anybody. Me, I fell off the edge of the earth. It absolutely affected me. All the rest of my friends, even people today, people would talk to the guy who was driving the car and said, you were there? You were there when that happened to Grant? And he said, yeah. What do you see? Whatever Grant said, that's what we saw. He had no interest whatsoever. And he was there. And so that's the whole thing. It affects different people. And then you start to realize that things are not happening randomly the way people think they are. Yeah. They are happening actually almost like we plan things. And you'll see that actually in abduction experiences, that 40% of all, 37% of all people who've had a near-death, correct me, 37% of all people who are experiencers will claim they've had a near-death experience. So you look at it as a random event. So what's the chances that you get picked up by gray aliens out of your bedroom? And at 37% of those people all had near-death experiences. And most of those people, I've talked to a lot of them, they've had 2 near-death experiences. So you think these are random events, and you come to realize they're not random events. They're events that you planned to teach you a lesson, to get the message out. And that's what's happening. People are having these experiences. They're sharing the stories. And as people share stories, the consciousness rises. It's not that we solve the problem, but we go back and forth. And eventually the consciousness rises to the point where sort of people figure it out. All the skeptics die. The new generation goes along with the idea. And that's how consciousness rises, is by the phenomena doing these really weird things. And so I call it the theory of wow. I say the phenomena, whatever it is, whatever paranormal phenomena you want to take, is not doing anything. It's just wants you to go, wow, what is going on? It gets you down the rabbit hole, and then you try to figure it out. They're not going to land on the White House lawn and tell you the story, because that's left brain. That's us. That's what we do. We go into another country. We say, we're here to bring you freedom, democracy, Jesus, and McDonald's. And then next thing they're pointing guns and saying, get the hell out of our country. Who do you think you are? And that's what they're doing. They're coming in and they're doing these weird things because nothing happens in science. There is no advances in science until there's awe and curiosity. When you get curious, that's when you put in money to research. That's when you try to figure it out. As long as you got everything figured out, you're never going to make any moves. So that's what they're doing. They're making us having awe and curiosity, almost like there was, I tell this story. I was raised as a Lutheran. Martin Luther, the big theologian from the 15th century or 14th century, whenever it was, basically was in a seance. Somebody claimed they got him in a seance, and they asked them the same question, except instead of saying, why don't UFOs land on the White House lawn? They said, why doesn't God get off his fat rear end and come down and tell us what's going on? And Martin Luther made the same statement. He said, because doubt is part of the equation. If the human soul were to know all the answers, it would grow wings and fly away and leave the body alone. The God is we are the sowers and God is the harvester. The plow must stay in the ground. And that's the whole thing. That's part of the thing. The doubt, the awe, the curiosity. This is part of what it's about. We know all the answers before we come in here, and it doesn't help to know all the answers. We come in and we come through the river of forgetfulness, and we work through these things to bring it out. It's all part of the thing, and you're not intended to know the answer.
The river of forgetfulness. Is that something we agree to?
Yes, that's an old idea, Eastern idea, and that's what you get is you have a lot of people who've come to the answer already. They figured this stuff out 5,000 years ago. This idea of oneness, of love is the core of the universe, that everything is Maya, that we manifest everything around us. All that kind of stuff is like 5,000 years ago. And the way that happened, I wrote a book called Contact Modalities. And the way it happens is what you do is you have a right brain and a left brain. Despite what everybody says, this is extremely important to realize. Your left brain is the male, rational, analytical. It wants to have urinating contests. It wants to have fights. It wants to battle and stuff like that. And then you have the female brain, which is taking more. Well, it's taken a step back in the last year or two, but it's the idea that we should all be one. We should be a family. We should all get together. We do things. So it's this idea that what happened in ancient times is people do meditation. And what meditation is, it's to get the left brain out of the way. So you say to the left brain, hey, watch your breath. Just concentrate on your breath. And the left brain knows everything. It knows more about meditation than the president, than the generals. It knows everything. So it says, yeah, I'm good. I can be the best counter breaths ever. And then the left brain starts counting the breaths, and then it gets distracted. I don't want to do this anymore. And it waves away. And then the person says, come back to the breath, back to the breath. And then the left brain goes back and starts counting the breaths again. And suddenly it gets totally bored and it clues out. And that's what happens. The noise stops. The left brain surrenders. It stops. And then suddenly all the noise is gone and the signal is there. And then the right brain picks up the signal and realizes that it's all there. So when I wrote the book Contact Modalities, I use a lot of examples that show everything is in the field. You come through the river of forgetfulness, but you know everything. Once you die, you know everything. And I actually have a new book that's coming out. It'll be called, it's a two-part book. It'll be called the big game, which is this whole idea that what is really going on? What is reality all about? And in there, I write an entire chapter called Everything's Perfect. And I've talked to people. I talked to a woman who's thrown off her motorcycle face first in the concrete, had a near-death experience. A guy who was in a float tank. A woman who did QHHT, who was having a bad time just reading a book. A woman who was holding her mother's hand had this experience. And they had this experience where suddenly they knew the answer to everything in the universe. And 40% of all experiencers, UFO experiencers, will say at one point during their experience, they knew the answer to everything in the universe, which means everything in the universe is knowable. It's you're cut off by that left brain, put into the world. 31% of all near-death experiencers say at one point during their experience, they knew the answer to everything in the universe. And so you have this sort of thing. And the other thing they'll say, I knew the answer to everything in the universe, and everything is absolutely perfect. Everything is exactly the way it's supposed to be. And we don't believe that. It's terrible and stuff like that. And then you go back to this idea about when you're born. You say whatever you think is bad is going on in the world. Just remember, 2 hours or a day or a week before you were born, you were sitting there in this field of oneness, and you were saying, I'm so excited. I'm going to go into the world, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and all this kind of stuff, and everything is perfect. And then you get in, and all this stuff starts happening, and the left brain, the ego, which is the center of the universe, says, oh, I'm a victim. Oh, that's all. Everybody's picking on me. It's unfair. And it gets into this illusion of the world, and it starts to believe all this kind of stuff. And basically what happens is when you have a near-death experience or something like that, where there's a trauma event where the left brain surrenders and shuts down, then suddenly you get this impression again about the fact that you know everything in the universe, and then you can't bring it back with you. You know it for a couple of seconds. Even I had that experience. You have that experience and you come back and you forget all this kind of stuff. So that's this whole idea that everything is there. So the old time guys like the Buddhists and the Hindus, what they were doing is they were doing meditation. They would sit in a cave, in a dark cave for weeks or months or years at a time, and their left brain would shut down and they would be in the right brain, and they would bring all this stuff back in. Now we use psychedelics, the contact modalities. I have 70 different methods that people use: hypnosis, psychedelics, meditation, trauma. Go through the front windshield of a car, you suddenly have this oneness experience where the left brain gets shut down, it surrenders. There's all these different modalities, and a lot of it's got to do with trauma. So we look at trauma as being very, very bad. But if you look at like mediums in Brazil, it was a study done of Brazil mediums, and they found, I think there's 18 mediums they studied, and there was like 15 had childhood abuse issues. And that's the whole thing. So if you're a child and you're being abused, what you're doing is you're trying to shut out the world, and you're cutting out the world, and all of a sudden, boop, you're talking to your dead grandmother. And that's what happens, is this idea is the ability to shut that left brain down, go into the field, get the material, and bring it back. And that's the whole thing. So all the answers are there. And if you look at the whatever it is, whatever this phenomenon is behind the UFO experience, 40% of people say at one point during the experience they knew the answer to everything in the universe, which means when they're on board the ship, the aliens or whoever they are have given them access to everything in the universe, which means the aliens have access to everything in the universe. They're not here to study our DNA. They're not here to study plants. They're not here to do whatever. They know what everything is. They're here to help. They're not here to study stuff. They've got the answer to everything. Otherwise, they would not be able to give it to the people who are there. The people have to go back and don't have it, but they have this. So the whole question now is coming: what is the intelligence we're talking to? Is it aliens? Is it humans like us? What is it? And I would say, in the end, what you're going to find out is the phenomena is at least 1,000 times more complex than what you believe. In the 50 years that I've gone through, every year it's like the door opens a little bit more, and it gets weirder and more complex and more complex and more complex. And nothing that I believed in 1975, I believe anymore. Nothing. It was like everything has changed.
Wow. So you were talking about knowing everything, and I get it, right? When people have trauma and they like, we look at them and go, oh, they're dissociating, but that is the separation from the left brain into the field, although,
Yeah, that's exactly the thing. It's as simple as that. And you'll get a lot of people who will write articles and say, "Oh, that's not true. The brain is just one. They're just making this too simple, and it's not that way." And you got to remember that who's writing the articles? They're left brain people writing the articles, and because their ego is saying, "Well, you're not cutting me out of this thing. What do you mean the ego doesn't count? I'm cutting it," and they defend it. And that's what you'll find with the ego is you'll find when you want to argue with skeptics. Skeptics are left brain. They know everything about everything. You can't argue with them, and it's totally useless to argue, because that's what skepticism. And that was actually done with experiments that were done in the 1970s and 1980s with split brain people. So they had people who had epilepsy, and what they would do is cut the corpus callosum and separate the two brains. And this was done in a Nobel Prize winning lab. And what they would do is they would give the person, so they would send a message to the male brain, and they would send a message to the female brain. They could do it by putting it in one eye or the other eye. And so what they would do is they would send, say, a message to the right brain, to the female brain. Now the female brain can't talk. The verbal center is in the left brain. The male brain talks. So when I'm talking to you, I'm talking to your left brain. I'm not talking to your right brain. And what they would do is, when the brains are separated, the brains don't know what the other side's saying. So they would send a message to the female brain, which can't talk, and they would say, "Get up and walk around." And then the person would get up and walk around, and then they would sit them down, and then they would say, "So why did you get up and walk around?" Now they're talking to the left brain. The right brain can't say why it got up and walked around, and the left brain will say, "Oh, I was getting tired. I wanted to stand up and walk around." Every single time, without fail, it would make something up. And then they would say, "Well, no, that's not what happened. We told the right brain to get up and walk around. That's why." And they said every single time it would double down. It would say, "No, no, no, no," and it would fight. And they would say, "Pick up a Coke, drink the Coke," and it'd be the same thing. And what they found, and I maintain this, they'll say, they call it the interpreter, and they'll say it's doing the best job it can with the information it's got, and they try to defend the left brain, and it's actually, it just makes up stories. And that's the whole thing. And it will double down. It will never give up. That's what a skeptic is. So when a skeptic says something, it's just something that jumps into your head, and it's always, always wrong. It's never right. It just makes
Yep.
up something. And so that's what happens is when someone says to a person who's got no experiences, oh, I saw this craft and there was this alien, they go, oh, it's your imagination. And then you say, well, no. And you start arguing. That popped into their head. That was the left brain. The interpreter put that little thing, and they will never, ever back off it. So it's totally useless. But the right brain, left brain is extremely important in terms of understanding what we're how this thing works, and in terms of getting the answer. And I've actually written, like I wrote a book on music. I wrote a book. A message was given to me by Chris Bledsoe. If you know Chris Bledsoe, his guardian beings gave a message for me, and it was the messages in the music. And I had no background in music, but I started working, and what I learned was almost all musicians are right brained. So they
Wow.
don't have the left brain. And what you have is most musicians cannot read and write music. People don't realize it's the Beatles, the Stones, Barbra Streisand. You go down there, none of them can read and write music. Reading and writing music is left brain. It's look at the notes, practice, 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 D, memorize, memorize, memorize. The right brain, I'll ask musicians all the time. I'll say, so where does the song come from? They go, I don't know. How do you do a song? And they go, I don't know. I just sit there and wait for it to come into my head. And that's the whole deal is the right brain. So the left brain is out of the way. The song comes. And in the book, I wrote, maybe I've got a list of 150 songs that came in dreams. For example, Yesterday by Paul McCartney came in a dream. He said it came in the dream, completely came, and he said there's a piano in the room. He quickly got the tone down, and then he went around. He said somebody's got to sing the song, and he went. Everybody said, "Hey, you ever heard this song before?" And they said, "No, I never heard that song before." And have you heard this song before? And he thought he was sure somebody had played it. He just remembered it, and then he thought, "No," and he put it down. And so what you'll find is almost all the best songs that were ever created are all created within 5 minutes or 10 minutes. You hear these people. Sting is worth $300 million, famous musician. $300 million. 1/3 of all his money came from one single song that he got. It came in 5 minutes. And this is the whole deal is when you shut down the left brain, then the information flows through, or you get situations where people in dreams, you hear the experience. The beings will say, we come to you in your dreams because now you're in our world. You're in that world. And you'll have the story like a famous song, Let It Be. Most people think it's got to do with Mother Mary in the Bible. It has nothing to do with that at all. It has to do with Paul McCartney was having a bad time. His mother died of cancer when he was 14 years old, and the Beatles were breaking up. He had drug problems. He was divorcing from his wife. He was totally distraught. He went to bed. He fell asleep, and his mother, whose name was Mary, came to him in the dream, and she said to him, Paul, it'll be okay. Let it be. That's where the song comes from. When in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. And you get this whole thing and you start to realize how many songs are download songs that they get, and how I started to have this experience in 2012 when I'm chasing the UFO and the nuts and bolts and aliens and all this kind of stuff. And suddenly I have a download experience, which comes with absolute certainty. It's like I say, for example, I say to you, okay, who's your first boyfriend? And the name pops in your head. And I say, are you sure? And you go, yeah, I'm sure. And when it comes in your head, it's that idea. It's like, and if somebody questions you, I know who it was. Don't question me. I know, because it's absolute certainty. And that's what it is. When the idea comes in your head, and what I got was this one of the fact that it's all got to do with consciousness. All the answers have got to do with consciousness. And as I make the joke, this 2012, I couldn't have spelled consciousness, and I could not have cared less. I had like UFOs, I had no interest in consciousness, but I was totally floored by it when this message came into my head, and it said, this is how it works. And it gave me 3 examples. The Canadian government in 1950 had said, flying saucers exist. It's the most highly classified subject in the United States. This is in a top secret memo. And we were also told by American officials that other things might be associated with the flying saucers, such as mental phenomena. This is 1950. They knew right from the word go. That popped into my head. And then Dr. Eric Walker, a former president of Penn State University, knew what was going on. We were pushing him. Come on, Walker, tell us what's going on. You're 80 years old. Tell us, you were part of the cover-up. You covered it up. Why did you do it? What's all this stuff? He said, let me ask you a question. What do you know about ESP? And then the guy said, I don't know, nothing. He said, well, look, unless you understand about ESP and how it works, you will not be taken into the control group. very few people understand how it works. And I didn't know, but in 2012, I said, oh, that's what Walker was talking about. I know what he's talking about now. And the third one was Ben Rich, who ran Lockheed Skunk Works. Jan Harrison ran MUFON, had an experience when he was 10 years old in his backyard with a flying saucer. It was in the backyard, and he and his brother are there looking at this thing a couple of feet away. And he became an electrical engineer. He was fat. He's obsessed like me. Became obsessed, and he wanted to know how propulsion system worked. So Ben Rich was there, and Ben Rich was Lockheed, where they supposedly got the flying saucers. He said, Ben, I need to know, how did they get here? How does the propulsion system work? And Ben Rich turns around and says to him exactly what Walker said 2 years before. He said, let me ask you a question. What do you know about ESP? And then John Hartson said, it means everything in time and space is connected. So that's how it works. Gets in his car and drives away. And those are the three things that came into my head. And it said, this is how it works. And these ideas. Oh, that's what these guys are talking about. Now I understand what they're talking about. So there's people that know this connection, and they've known it since 1950. Consciousness is extremely important to this entire mystery.
So let me ask a question. A lot of people feel that there has been a cover-up, and they feel that there are nefarious energies that want to create fear and want to create situations so we stay in our left brain. What do you think about that?
Okay, well, one is true. The way what's going on now is if you want money. So UFO community has never had any research money. Everybody's broke. Nobody's got any money. Nobody's got nothing. And so if you want to do it, how are you going to get money? So Leslie Kane wrote a book in 2010, 2011 about high-level military witnesses. And she said, well, we need to research this because it might be a threat to airline traffic. And everybody just, yeah, sure. Like, get out of here. Go, get lost. And so nothing went there. So what they're doing now, and I maintain is what they're doing now to Congress, if I want to separate you from your money, what I do is I create what's going on right now. The United States is going crazy. Everything's falling apart. There's nothing going right. It's absolutely, and I'm the guy that's going to solve it. And everybody wants to play the victim. So they say, oh, okay, here's my money. How much money do you want? And they separate you from your money. So that's what's happening in Congress right now. Is the only way it's going to work is if you're in Congress and you're in the agriculture department, or you're even in weapons or whatever, somebody comes in and says, oh, there's these UFOs flying around. And they go, so what? I'm building weapons. I'm running the agriculture. Who cares? Get out of my office and don't let the door hit you on the way out. So what you've got to do is you've got to create a need. So what they do is they say, oh, the aliens are going to rape the women and eat the kids. And it's terrible. And it's like, oh my God. And then they go, what do you mean? What do you mean? They're going to eat us. And then you get this whole deal that then they say, how much money do you want? How many $1 billion you want? There's a $900 billion defense budget. There's a lot of money there, and there's a lot of research money, and everybody's trying to get the research money to build weapons, get patents. You get a lot of scientists in the background who are trying to get patents. That's what's going on. You're just trying to create fear, because what happened, and I explained this, we went to the high-level government people, or the witnesses that are out there now that are pushing Congress. Lou Elizondo, Chris Mellon, Gary Nolan was going to be on there. And what we discovered in Canada was there was one major MP, he's in the opposition party, who was interested in UFOs, and he's following the whole thing. And he had asked for the Canadian government files. I sent him the old Canadian government files and stuff like that. So we knew he was interested. Then at one point, I said to his aide, I went to his aide and I said, hey, and I heard there was other MPs that might be interested. So I said, hey, Larry Maguire, he's interested. What if I put together a panel of experts out of the United States that know what's going on, and we do it on the internet, and everybody can live stream. Anybody can live stream it. I'll give everybody the feed. They can live stream it. And these MPs will come forward and say, hey, guess what? We're interested in UFOs. So you'd have all these government people in Canada would come forward and say, hey, we're interested. We want to ask these questions. And then they would have like a panel. So these guys, these experts would have this panel, and they would answer questions of these MPs. And of course, everybody in Canada would go, I didn't know there was all these people interested in UFOs. Oh my goodness. And what happened is the Prime Minister of Canada, the head guy, his science advisor wanted to do a UFO study, but they wanted a cover. So this was going to be a cover to provide the interest in the public, in the newspapers, that she would say, oh, these people all want it, so we're going to do a UFO study. So when we told the Americans, they said, yeah, okay, we'll play the game. Yeah, we'll do this. We're going to sit on this panel, and there's going to be 10 MPs. We found out there's going to be 10 MPs. We're going to sit there, and they were going to ask questions of Lou Elizondo, Chris Mellon, Avi Loeb, Gary Nolan, and these experts, and it would this all be live broadcast, and it would be like absolutely like a total circus. And then they said to us, they said, well, you got military witnesses, and then you do this kind of stuff. We're going, we get no military witnesses in Canada. We're not, couldn't care less about military witnesses. And this is, well, that's what you got to do. And we said, well, no. And then the aide to the Larry McGuire said to them, well, no, we want to do a scientific investigation. The Prime Minister's science advisor wants to do a scientific investigation. And they said, well, you get these military witnesses and you put them on committees and you bring them in. And it's this whole threat scenario. You got to do the threat scenario. And we kept saying, you don't understand how it works in Canada. You can't just bring in people and subpoena them. And it doesn't work the same as the US government. And the Prime Minister runs the whole thing, and he wants to do a scientific investigation. And we kept pushing, and the science advisor said, no, we want to do a scientific investigation. And at that point, Chris Mellon said, that's the poison pill. I am gone. And they pulled out. And they basically talked about the Logan Act. We can't tell another country what to do, but indirectly they're telling us, we can't tell you what to do, but until you do what we tell you to do, we're not going to help you. And they pulled out and they refused to get involved anymore. And the whole thing fell apart. And that was the whole thing. We wouldn't go with the threat scenario. The Canadians wanted to go with, and that report is supposedly going to be out at any day now in Canada, this report by the Prime Minister's science advisor, but it's going to be a scientific thing. And that's what we look at, is we don't want to have the threat scenario, but that's the big thing. Until you have a threat scenario, until you scare the living daylights out of anybody, you can't get any money. That's what they're doing. They're scaring the Congress, and they're playing this threat scenario, and they're going to walk away with suitcases full of money.
Yeah.
Is that really what it's all about, the fear, or is there a group, that are puppeting this whole thing?
Well, that's where I disagree with most people. And on this cruise, we're going to be doing some panels, and I'm sure they're going to want to throw me off the ship because I'm going to fight with these guys. And these are major guys like Danny Sheehan and Bassett and all these guys. And they have this idea. There's a new bill that they're writing in Senate. And I'm basically saying, forget the nonsense about the Illuminati. This is absolute craziness. I mean, what we're doing is the same thing. We're doing this fear thing. There's this Illuminati and they're after us. And I said, I've been in this for 50 years. And I went after the president of the United States. I went after the highest level guy. I went after Ron Pandolfi, Kit Green, people from the CIA. I went after all these people and I wrote them up in books. And I've never been threatened. Nobody's ever threatened me. So the whole deal is, who's running the story? The story is being run by the president of the United States. This thing is legal. And all these people are going to say, no. And I'm saying, yes, this is legal. This is actually the way it actually works. There's a story told by James Lukatsky. James Lukatsky is one of the people who is leaking material from the government. People will say, no, they're not leaking material. I said, they absolutely are leaking material from the government, because you can take Tom DeLonge. Tom DeLonge talked to McCaslin, General McCaslin at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. He was operational when he was talked to. Kerry, General Kerry, he talked to. He talked to Robert Weiss. These people were operational. And I know, because I worked for the government, I know that if I worked at the University of Manitoba, I could not go to the public and talk about the University of Manitoba. I had no authorization. Unless you're public affairs or you're the president, you cannot talk. You cannot just go and talk about it. So if these people are inside the government and they're talking UFOs with people, they're getting permission to do it. This is not something they're doing on their own. So Dr. James Lukatsky, and he's the guy that ran the OSAP program. So he's the guy that went to Skinwalker Ranch, ran that whole $22 million program. He's the main guy. So what he says is, he said, I did not see anything illegal. I just saw very high security. And that's what I believe is going on. So the whole operation is run. He tells a story, and I said, am I the only person who actually listened to this interview that he said in 2011, he talked about the craft. They had a craft and they got inside the craft. That's all people, oh, they got a craft. Oh man, you got inside the craft. Nobody listened to the rest of what he said. He said, I was 2011. And he said, I was in let's say I was in a Senate facility, a congressional facility. And there was a senator there. And there was a deputy, I can't remember, it was a deputy undersecretary there. So that means the deputy undersecretary, that's executive branch. That's under Biden. Or at that time, it would have been under Barack Obama. So you have an executive member, and you have a senator. I said, am I the only one that heard that there was a senator standing there when they were talking about this craft and being inside the craft? And I said, and he said there was a much more to it. There was a much more, but I can't go into it. I need to get approval. So what he says is, when I put this stuff out, I put it in a book. He's put out the second book. When I put it out, I get the government to approve it. They rewrite it. They make sure that we don't violate security, and I can put it out. He said, in order to get the rest of that meeting, what happened in that meeting, I would have to get it approved for release. So he's saying there's rules and regulations. And that's exactly what Eric Walker said to us in 1990, the guy who knew everything. He said, let me ask you a question. He said, why should we change the rules and regulations to satisfy your curiosity? And when I heard rules and regulations, I went, hey, there's rules and regulations to this thing. He's actually following the rules. And that's what Lakatsky says as well. So he says the senator and this undersecretary were in the room, and we had this discussion about the fact that there was crash flying saucers, which means the Senate knows. Reid at the time was he was the majority leader in the Senate. He was the main guy. He was one of what they call the group of eight, the gang of eight. There's 8 guys who are briefed on everything. They may not be told the details, but they're saying we've got these secret, we've got a UFO program, and even it's called an unacknowledged waived special access program, which means even the existence of the program, to say that what the program, to confirm the program exists, is a violation of national security. You have to lie. If someone says there's a program, you've got to say, no, there's no program. That is even top secret. So Reid knew we had crash flying saucers. He knew he'd been inside one. There was an undersecretary from Obama's administration who was in there. So they knew, which means it's legal. What happens is, if you're in the government and you recover a crash flying saucer, Roswell, whatever crash flying saucer, if you're the prime minister and you're the premier or the president, and you're the governor of Georgia or California or whatever, what do you know about crash flying saucers? You don't know anything. Half the U.S. government is contracted out. So what you do is you go to the contractor and you give them the craft and you say, hey, this is top secret. We'd like you to figure out how does the craft work. So you give the crafts. That's what I said to the people. Like, how did the people get the crafts? And they say, oh, they had recovery teams. I said, baloney. The government gave them the crafts. Now they want the crafts back. So they're saying, oh, you've got to give the stuff back. And the contractors are now saying, we put money in this. We're not going to give it back. So you take a look at last year, they had this big thing about the amendment. Schumer put out an amendment. Schumer was the head of the Senate. He puts out this amendment, and it says there's going to be disclosure over a 7-year period. There's going to be a 9-person panel under the president. They're going to have subpoena power. They can bring in people and force them to testify. You're going to have to give the crafts back, and you're going to have to release all the data. So what happens? It goes into the House, and then you have the Republicans in the House. You have Rogers and Turner and Mike Johnson. You have 3 Mikes, and they all say, we're killing this bill. We're not going to let it come through here. We're going to kill the bill. And then what happens is, in order for a bill to be signed into law, you need the Senate and you need the House to pass the bill. It is the Congress that makes law. So you have guys inside. You'll have this Tim Burchett who's complaining, oh, there's an Illuminati and they're covering up. And I said, I hate to be the loudmouth Canadian who tells an American how the American government works, but Tim Burchett, you are the Illuminati. You are the government. You are the guy that writes laws. Don't be blaming the mother-in-law. Don't be blaming Biden. You're the write the law. You can write a law anytime you want and pass it that says UFOs are legal, but he can't get it through because his buddies are blocking the bill. And because it was blocked in the House, they had to rewrite the law. And when they rewrote the law, they took the eminent domain out. They took the 9-person panel out, and they took out the thing about the fact that they had to put out their material. That is law. So that was signed by the Senate, by the House, and it was signed by the president. That is the law. The law says they get to keep the crafts. They don't have to release stuff. You can't bring them in and subpoena. That is the law. And anytime that Burchett wants to change the law, he can write a law and get it passed. And as I said, if there had been 6 more Democrats elected to the House in 2022, we would have disclosure today, because these guys, these 3 Mikes, would not have been in power. They would not have been able to block the bill. It would have gone through and we would have disclosure. It's only because 3 guys in the House decided they're going to block the bill. That's why we don't have disclosure today. End of story. There is no
Yeah.
Illuminati. They would love you to believe the Illuminati. They'd love you to believe they're going down some dark
Yeah.
alley in France, because you're never going to find the Illuminati, and you're going to be gone for the rest of life. Get them out of the way. Make them believe there's an Illuminati. It's run by law. It's all done legally, and because it's so high security, everybody is sworn to secrecy as to what they know.
Yeah, I think also that they put provisions in the law that make it illegal, whatever, pretty much whatever they do. But here the other day, I watched a video by Catherine Austin Fitz.
Yep.
She said that between 1998
Yep.
till 2015, there were $21 trillion missing from the federal government. They don't know where it went. Do you think that went I'm sure a lot of it ends up in the pocket of politicians, but the majority, could that be what is paying to build the secret space program?
Well, I really don't. That's one thing I sort of disagree. I don't believe they don't really know what's going on. They have no clue what's going on. And that's what I was told. That was a message I was given. You haven't got a clue. That's what I said at the beginning. I said, the more I look at this thing, the more they open the door, the more complex this thing gets. For example, Danny Sheehan has just done an interview, and you talked about the missing money. Well, yeah, sure, that's how it works. And there's only 3 rules in the United States. Number 1 rule is money. Number 2 rule is money, and number 3 rule is money. It's all about money. It's about how you can get it, and power. So if you have the power, you can do what you want. So yeah, the money is disappearing. But you have a situation where Danny Sheehan did an interview, and he talked about the fact that this thing is sort of out of control, and they're trying to put another bill through Senate, and it's going to go to the House, but it's dead on the House, because it's the basic thing that if you even have the situation where the story where Donald Trump says to the energy guys, give me $1 billion into my campaign and you can write the bill. So they'll say, well, maybe if Trump gets in, he's a wild card, he's just going to disclose. So if you're Lockheed, you go to Lockheed, and they go to the president and they say, you want $1 billion from the energy guys. How much would it cost for us to get you to keep the UFO thing secret? Half $500 million? Yeah, okay, make a deal. And that's the whole thing. People got to realize it's all about money. So you have a $900 billion defense budget. There is no way that the government is going to shut down a $900 billion defense budget and they're all going to go and get honest jobs. It's not going to happen. Lockheed shares, go on the internet. Lockheed shares are now $760 a share. There's no way the people who are running the technology, making money from their stocks at Lockheed, are going to burn their shares. There's no way. It's all in there. And that's what Eisenhower warned in his last speech when he left the White House. He said, beware the military industrial congressional complex. You've got this thing going. Everybody's got money. Everybody's making money. It's like the F-35 jet fighter made out of Lockheed. I remind people it's made in 47 different states. Why are they making a lot of the F-35 in 47 different states? Because every congressman is compromised. You're getting money. You're getting money into your campaign. And people would say to me before, they said, Hillary Clinton. They were talking. Hillary Clinton won't talk. She won't talk about UFOs. She knows. And I said, if you go to Hillary Clinton's big event where she's charging $35,000 a person to come, and you pay $35,000, and you go and ask her about UFOs, she'll talk about UFOs. Let me guarantee you. And that's the whole thing. The people who are providing the money to the congressmen, they need a lot of money to run. Those are the people they're going to listen to. And so that's what's happening is you've got people who believe in national security, and they're getting money from Lockheed and Boeing and all these different companies that keep the whole thing going. And it's impossible to move around. And Eisenhower warned us about this. Nobody listened. And now we're in a situation where everybody's mother's probably told them one time in their life or another, you made your bed, now lie in it. That's what the situation is. It's totally out of control. And there's no way. It's like the Supreme Court. Somebody says, well, we should change the Supreme Court. It was too liberal before, and now it's too conservative. We should revise the Supreme Court. Good luck. They've got the power. You're not going to change the Supreme Court. You're not going to change the political system. You're not going to shut down the budget, the defense budget. This is something that is built in now, and it's almost impossible to turn it around.
Yeah, I know.
What is the answer?
You wait till it all collapses and it all falls apart. I mean, it could be, But if you take a look at the world, if you take a look at this idea that you come into the world and you choose when you are born, you choose when you're going to die, you choose all the trauma events that are going to happen in your life. So people are looking at it and it's like, oh, the world is terrible. It's, oh man, it's terrible. And it's like, whatever the situation is, no matter how bad you think the situation is, remember this, that you chose to be here at this time and this place in the middle of whatever mess you found yourself in. And maybe you chose to come at this time and in this place in the middle of this mess to do something about it. It's not what cards are dealt to you, it's how you play your cards. So we're looking at it and we're saying, boy, if everything was going good, but if everything's going good, it's this whole idea that there's no awe and curiosity. There's channelers. One that I follow very closely is Paul Selleck. Paul Selleck says this whole idea that you you manifest what happens around you, and that you present these things to yourself in order to work it, and you basically are in a situation where you develop things, you bring in things, and you're playing this game, and whatever, everything is divine, everything is perfect, and whatever you take and separate from that perfect and move it into the darkness by co-resonance, you resonate with whatever you think. So if you're negative, you're going to resonate negatively. Whatever you put into darkness and say that is not divine, I'm divine, it's not divine, you will resonate with it, it will pull you into the darkness with it. What you damns you back, what you blesses you in return. To say I am divine and that is not divine is the shadow pretending to be the light. All the things that happen negatively to us are the things that make us grow. And so he even said this whole thing about the fact that in 2016, before the election, he said, you have this thing about this channel where he said, you have these things about, should I take the salt or the pepper off the table? He said, the table is about to be turned over. What you have, all the things that have been built in fear must now be brought out of the darkness, brought into the surface, and be seen in a new light. The dead body has to be dug out of the basement and brought into the light. That's what's going on now. Everything that we've been building in fear, because what's happening now is not only do we see the negative, but we see what the positive is. We see what the alternative is, and it becomes more and more extreme where we make this decision. So everything that happens to us is planned by us, that we're doing this kind of stuff. And what we want this perfect world where nothing's going wrong and then nothing happens. It's almost like God comes into a movie theater and you're in the movie theater and you're saying, I love you. I love you. Oh, I love you too. I love you. I love you. And God goes, oh my God, I can't get out of here. This is a terrible movie. I'm going to go and watch Star Wars. And it's like, just everything's happening and the good guys and the bad guys. And that's what's happening. That's how we're learning our lesson through these various extremes, that it's almost like the people who are very negative, maybe that's their role. Their role is to wake us up, is to say, oh my God, can you believe what this guy's doing? It's, oh my God, and then that's maybe his role. And when he comes off the stage, they go, that was fantastic, you were just great. And it's a play. We forget who we are. You got to remember the basic mystical teaching. Remember who you actually are. You are not the puppet on the stage. Because you played King Henry VIII in grade 12 high school does not mean you're now King Henry VIII. You're playing a puppet on the stage, and when you leave, you're going to go and play another puppet, and you're the person who's watching the play. You're coming in. It's all a game. It's all, and we take it much too seriously, the same as me. You get dragged in the illusion. You keep forgetting who you actually are. You're a physical being having you're a spiritual being having a physical dream. And you planned it. You came in here. Do the best you can with it, and realize that this idea that I've written about in this new book is the idea that everything's perfect. Everything's exactly the way it's supposed to be. You say, oh, no. And you say, no, everything's exactly. There was even the one with Roland Griffith, who ran the psilocybin studies at Johns Hopkins for many years. And he suddenly got fourth stage cancer. And then so they said, did you do the psilocybin? Because they use psilocybin to make people at the end of their life, they come out and they're ready to die. Everything goes away. They're completely content. So he said, well, do you do psilocybin? He said, well, no, I did LSD. And they said, well, what happened? He said, well, I was talking to the cancer. And he went to the cancer and he said, so what's the deal? Am I going to die? And the cancer said, yes, you're going to die. And he said, really? Yeah, it's okay. Everything's okay. You're going to die. Don't worry about it. And he said, well, but I'm here to do a message. Yes, yes, you were here to do a message. And then he said, well, but if you give me a couple more years, I can get more of the message out. No, no, everything's exactly what it's supposed to be. Don't worry about it. And it was this whole idea that he's talking to the cancer, that we want to take the good things and separate the bad things, but it's the bad things that move you. It's like this thing with trauma, the dissociation. It's the things that dissociate you with that make you shut the ego down. When the ego's under attack, and when it gets attacked, then it surrenders, and suddenly you're in the light, and you're in this bliss state. But you have to have the ego
Yeah.
surrender, and that's where you have this duality. Everything is necessary in the world. God created, as I said to my son all the time, God created pain for a reason. Everything has a purpose in terms of how it works. And
Yeah.
we are in the middle of this sort of thing, and at the leading edge. I think in the
Yeah.
paranormal world, we're at the leading edge, because what these breadcrumbs are doing, these weird things they're doing, is they're moving us closer and closer to what is reality. We get very set in our ways about a physical world, and wait till somebody tells you got 3 months to live before you freak out, whatever. That's what most people live in, lives of quiet desperation. But we're on the very leading edge, where we realize, oh, there's this weird stuff, and it may be this, and it may be that, and we may be planning our lives and stuff like that, and we spend our whole life trying to figure out why we're here, whereas most people don't spend 2 minutes thinking about that.
Yeah, that's you said something that a bit closer to reality. That tells us what we're having here is maybe not quite reality. But before the show, I mentioned something about alien technology, and you said you're working on something on that. Could you talk? We got
Okay.
5 minutes left for the show, so
Oh,
give
okay.
it.
So I have to make this quick. Okay. So again, this James Lukatsky talked about the fact that they'd been inside the craft. Then he adds this, and everybody ignored this too. He said, and the weird thing was, he's laughing when he says it. He's giving you a hint. He said, the weird thing about it, it didn't have any engine. So I went back to Chris Bledsoe. I went to Chris Bledsoe. I said, Chris, when you were taken in 2007, you were gone for 4 hours, and you said it felt like it was 4 months. I said, you were in that little glass orb thing. I said, as I recall, was there an engine on that thing? He goes, there was never an engine. And then Betty Andreasen talks about being in this craft that they're moving around, no engine. And so the whole question is, if there's no engine, what's really going on? So when James Lukatsky was talking, he mentioned there's no engine, and then he said something else very significant. He said, we have determined, now this is a guy around the program, he said, we have determined that the craft the technology is a combination of physical and psychic elements. And suddenly it occurred to me, it was like an aha moment. I go, oh, I wrote the book called UFO Sky Pils. 36 people, and I've now got way more than 36 people who claim they've flown the craft. And they would tell this story that the craft was alive, the craft was conscious, they would touch the craft, they would become one with the craft, and then whatever they thought is what would happen. And they were told by the beings would say, go within yourself. It's within you. Imagine it when you can imagine it in your mind. Push the button and we will go there. And this is this whole idea. If there's no time and space, how big is the universe? Is there actually a universe out there? And this is where I say it gets more complex. So you have this thing. So when he said this idea that was psychic and physical components, then I'm saying, hey, I've been saying this for a long time. And then I'm thinking, and he said, we got 200,000 UFO sightings in the database for OSAP. Every single sighting was different. So every single UFO is different. And then I'm thinking, I go back and look at the data, and I go, sure enough, one person touched the panel, one touched the panel on the wall, one put their fingers in the end of a chair, one had a toggle switch, one, Chris Bledsoe, had a beehive on a pedestal in the middle of the thing. Nobody touched the same thing twice. And I'm going, what's the chances? I got 36 people and everybody touched something different. And the whole deal is there actually a technology, or is this all in your mind? Are you believing they're inside a craft and everybody's doing this different sort of thing? So the way we work in science is we say there's this pattern, there's this green ones. And then if we get the metal, no metal is the same. You can take all those metals that are dropping. People think the UFO comes across the galaxy and then little pieces start falling off it. All those pieces are different. Every single leaf on a tree is different. Every snowflake is different. Every crop circle is different. Every ground trace is different. Every UFO is different. And on the cruise ship, I'm going to do the grays. Everybody said the grays, they're all the same. I take Betty Andreassen's gray, put it against Whitley Strieber's gray. Then I put Betty Hill's gray. And I said, do you think they'll look the same? And when you see them, boom, 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 beside each other, they don't even look close. They're all different. And this is the
Yeah.
whole thing. We're making this assumption there's things that are the same. There may not even be a technology. There's bodies and there's crafts, but that doesn't mean you know where they're coming from. We assume they're extraterrestrial. I would be very surprised if they're extraterrestrial, because when you look at aliens, you start looking at aliens and you look at the experiences and you see, when people are on board a ship, they say that people will ask them, were you scared? Did they probe you? What was going on? And when I see them, I say, you are on the ship? Yeah. Let me ask you a question. Do they have any clothes on? And they go, no, I didn't have any clothes on. I never thought of that. And I said, don't you think that was kind of weird? The aliens got no clothes on? And they go, yeah. Did he have any sex organs? Did he have a belly button? Did he have nipples? No, I didn't have that. Did he have a mouth? No, I didn't really have a mouth. Just had a slit. Have ears? No, I didn't have ears. Have hair? No, didn't have hair. And then you go through this whole list of stuff. And even when you have David Jacobs used to have, when the alien would do this thing where they look into the person's eyes, and they call that a brain scan. They look in the person's eyes very, very close. And they say, he's looking in my mind. He's seeing what I did last Wednesday. He's reading my mind. And then David Jacobs will say, hey, is he breathing? And the guy go, no, he's not breathing. So if they're not breathing and they don't eat, they don't drink, they don't sleep, they don't have belly buttons, they don't have sex organs, what are we really dealing with here? Is this really an alien? And the example I use is Jim Semivan. Jim Semivan is talking. Jim Semivan had the experience.
Yeah.
He's a high-level CI guy. And he says, behind me, there was a being, and it had a guardian type thing going on about it. And I'm going, guardian type thing? Was it on the right or left side? Because when you go in front of the council, when you die, your spirit guide stands behind you on the left side. So are we dealing with spirit guides here? Or are we dealing with aliens? And as I said, the more I look at this thing, the more it looks complex. And it's not as simple as ETs coming from other planets. This thing just gets more complex and more complex and more complex the more you study it.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow, Grant.
Oh man, we are down to the end here, so let people know where they can look at your books and go to where you have a website also. Let us know that.
No, really, I
also.
have a place where my books are. It's all connected, which is the basic principle. It's all connected. Weebly site. We put Weebly and it's all connected, one word, because it is all connected. That was the idea of the word. And I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. They can look me up. My books are on Amazon, and I would recommend people make sure they get the book that's coming out called The Big Game, because I'm going to look at all the paranormal phenomena and I'm going to show you how it's all one thing. They're all the same thing. They're just coming in different ways. They play this game and the ghosts play their games and everybody's playing games and they're all doing this thing, but it's all basically the same thing. There is only one thing. It's all consciousness, it's all alive, and it's all connected.
Yeah, and quantum mechanics actually backing up everything you said there.
Yeah, and we are the creators. We are the sparks of the divine. God did not create the heaven and the earth. God created the sparks of the divine, and we're creating the heaven and the earth as we go along through consciousness. We're creating the world, and so whatever world you get is the one that you built. Take responsibility for it, and quit blaming everybody else for the problems that are around us. In the end, when you leave, they're not going to ask you about what anybody else did. They're only going to ask you what you did, and everybody says the same thing. I could have done better.
Okay.
Thank you for your 50 years of dedication, and thank you for coming and seeing us. We have to have you on again soon because there's so much information that it's just not enough. So
yeah,
thank you so much, Aage.
Yeah, gosh, folks, go to Amazon and put Grant Cameron's name in there and look at all those books. I looked at some of the titles and I wish, man, oh man, I wish I had some of those. So go have a look at it. I think you're going to love what he's written about. There's many books there. So thank you very much for being with us.
My thanks. I appreciate it. And let's do it again soon.
Yes, let's do that.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you. Take care. And
bye-bye.
Bye-bye. See you next time.
Okay.
Yeah.